What is going on, YouTube? In today's video, we are going to cover the installation process of OpenWRT. Essentially what it is an open source operating system, a Linux operating system that we could go ahead and install on our router. The reason why we are doing this is because it allows for more advanced customization, some advanced features, security, and again, it is open source. But mainly for this purpose of this tutorial with Security Onion, we're going to be using it in order to have the option to using a span port or a way to tap the port, which essentially will copy the traffic from one port and forward it to another, and allowing us to capture that information inside of Security Onion, so we could go ahead and analyze the traffic as it's coming in live without just doing a packet capture and then doing it that way. This will allow us to do everything as the traffic is coming through the network. So it would be everything on that one port will be forwarded to our our Security Onion dashboard. So with that being said, if you have not seen the last video, in the last video or the very first video of this playlist, we had covered the installation process of Security Onion, and today we are going to cover OpenWRT. It is not necessary for everyone, but in my case, my router does not support those options, so that is what we're going to do today. So to start, you're going to want to head over to openwrt.org, and you're going to want to go over to the TOH, or the table of hardware, and in there you'll be able to find the different versions and the if it's compatible or not. So once you find yours, you're going to go ahead and want to find the support and the device page. In my case, I'm using the Linksys E8 or EA8100 version 1, and then it kind of breaks down the various steps and the specs of that router. But this is important as it does give you some warnings and ways to revert if the flash of the firmware or the operating system does fail. So this is where you definitely want to be in order to proceed with the installation process of OpenWRT. So in my case, as I had mentioned, make sure that you go ahead and read any warnings. In this case, on this router, this is a dual partition router, so it has two partitions, and the software, as you can see here, does not support dual partitions. So when we're writing it, it does not give us the option to choose which partition. So we might run into the problem where the partition that has been picked upon the installation or the flash of this firmware, it will not boot up, and we will have to revert back to the original installation of Linksys. So make sure you go ahead and read those warnings. Next, you want to go ahead and read the OEM easy installation. This may vary from one router to the next. In my case, these are the pretty simple steps. So we're going to go ahead and navigate to the Linksys router's web UI. We're going to go to the firmware update section under the connectivity tab. We're going to click the choose file. We're going to select the factory bin image that we download here. We're going to ignore any warnings, and we're going to proceed to flash the image. And once the router boots, you should be able to access the OpenWRT, which is, I don't know if it's Lucy or, but essentially it's going to be a web interface. To download the file, you see it up here at the top. I just went ahead and went over to the firmware OpenWRT install URL. Open that in a new tab, or just click on it, and you will download that factory image. All right, once you are on your router, it may obviously vary. Every router is going to be different, but in this case, since we're going over the installation process, we're going to go over to connectivity, and then over here on the right side, you'll see the manual, and we're going to go ahead and click choose file, and we're going to upload that file that we had discussed earlier. Once that file is allowed or selected, go ahead and hit start, and we're going to obviously ignore any warnings. And let's hope for the best. Alright, so as I stated in the warnings, also I was on the wrong version, not realizing that I was on V2 or on V1. I needed to be on V2. The instructions were the same, but the file was different. With that being said, as I had mentioned, that warning kind of gave me a hard time. It took a few installs in order to finally get to the web UI, but here we are. Alright, so once you get to the initial login screen, there is no password assigned, so go ahead and just press login. In my case, I had just assigned a password, so I'm going to go ahead and enter that now. Some of this might be blurred out. A lot of it really doesn't pertain to you guys. Obviously, it wouldn't matter if you knew about it anyway, but as far as MAC addresses and stuff like that, I kind of want to keep that private. This way, if I ever was compromised, no one would really have an understanding of what's going on. But with that being said, this is pretty much it. I'm going to close out the tutorial in a minute. I'm just going to go walk through a few other additional steps as far as installing OpenWRT. So here we have just some overall statistics about the router. We have the various ports down here, which is pretty cool, whether they're up or down and connected and how much data is being passed through. So that's a nice little UI, nice little interface there. Then we have just our additional information down here, kind of giving us our IP address. And then as we scroll on down, we have additional information about our network, seen here. Then we have some of our IP addresses that are getting assigned through our DHCP server, which is all set up automatically. So now some of my devices are going to have new IP addresses with the new firmware that I'm using, aside from those that are statically assigned. And then down here at the bottom, which I'll show you in a minute, we have additional information about our wireless. So when it is first installed, they will both be disabled. I went ahead and enabled it, kind of played around with it to make sure that it was working, and I'll show you how to do that now. Go to the top, go to network, click on wireless. In here, when it first comes here, you're going to see that this is disabled. You're going to see two of them disabled. Default name of OpenWRT. I had changed it already to D5G, just kind of playing around with the name or the SSID. So in this case, all you're going to go ahead and do before going and enabling it, go into edit. The main things you are going to want to change is going to be obviously the SSID. Head over to wireless security, select encryption. By default, I just went with the PSK, WPA2. You can do either or. Obviously, don't recommend going down here. Simply just keep this default auto, enter a key, similar to what you would do on any other router, and then just go ahead and hit save. You have the other options here where you can go ahead and enable a you have some other options here too under the MAC filter tab. You could go ahead and start filtering out MAC addresses, or allow all except listed, or allow listed only. So that's pretty cool. We have some advanced settings in here. But with that being said, that's all you really need to do as far as initially setting up your wireless, and then just go ahead after you change the name, get the port or the security, go ahead and hit save. And then all you're going to go ahead and do is just click enable. And once those changes have been implemented, you will be able to log into your wireless network. A few other things too real quick is if you head over back to the status tab, you get additional information. So you got your routing, your firewall. None of this is set up yet, but this is pretty cool as this was not an option on my previous router by default. So that's pretty cool. This is just kind of giving us an overview. This is not where you change anything. And then you have some real-time graphs, which is also pretty cool. You go in here, kind of see what's going on the network. But if you want to change any of that, you're going to go ahead and go over to network tab, and then go down to firewall, for instance, and you can go ahead and add in rules, which is awesome. Port forwards, NAT, and that's pretty much it as far as the initial installation. Another thing that you might want to do is obviously you could change your host name here, and the time zone too. This is important for logging. In my case, I believe that it should be UTC. Obviously, aside from my Windows machine, all other servers are going to be on UTC, so there's a standard time format for when you're reviewing logs. One last thing is if you go over to the network tab and go to interfaces, in here you might want to change your default IP address. In my case, I'm going to leave it for now at 192.168.1.1. I previously had it set to another IP address. but I had nothing tied to it, so it does not really matter if I leave it here for now. But that is something that you might need to change. But that is something you might need to change along with any DNS servers if you have that as well. But that's going to close out today's video. So today we just briefly covered the installation process of OpenWRT, an open source Linux operating system on your router. The reason why I went ahead and did this is because now I will have the option to create a span port, or a way to tap a port and copy the traffic from one port onto another port in order for us to import it into Security Onion and pretty much get a live view of the traffic on the network. So that's going to close out today's video. In the next video, we are actually going to create that span port and kind of show how that's going to work with Security Onion. And then we're going to go ahead and continue onward with the tutorials and how to use Security Onion. So I hope you were able to take something away. So far, we had installed we had installed Security Onion. And in today's video, we had installed OpenWRT. And as always, never stop learning.